Good morning. I wanted to share with you a technique that I developed when I would get stuck working on a particular pattern or limiting belief or tendency that I used to have. And I developed this about a year ago by accident, actually. And it fit in perfectly with me at the time because I really was committed to doing everything alone and completely by myself. And when I would get stuck, I guess I kind of found a loophole to get around having to ask other people for help. And I started asking my astral self or my pure consciousness to accomplish things when I was asleep and to clear blockages. So I want to tell you the story of how this came about. About a year and a half ago, I was planning a trip to the Netherlands for a class for a therapy technique that I do. And a new friend was meeting me there. And this particular friend is also an osteopath. And we both are, which we found out later, quite connected energetically. And at the time, right in the few weeks leading up to the trip, I was having a lot of things about astral projection pop up. A lot of ads. It would come up in conversation a bit randomly. A course would be recommended. So when that happens, I know that something is coming into my life. So I was curious and excited because I'd always wanted to know more about it and to try it. But I hadn't been able to yet. So when I went to the Netherlands, my friend decided to help me with my body, and she told me that my heart was too high. And when your heart is too high, it can kick in a reflexive response called fear paralysis. Fear paralysis is a sensitivity to touch, visual stimuli, and auditory stimuli. So I guess the heart being too high would be more of a tactile or a touch trigger. And so what that does is it puts your body in a fear response and a protective response. And she lowered my heart, and then I went back to my room to meditate like I always did. And the second I sat down and closed my eyes, I shot out of the front of my head, and I was in the room. And I had always, since I was small, astral projected in my sleep or bilocated. I'm not sure which exactly all the time. I think it's different at different times. So I knew what I was seeing, because it looked the same, this hazy perspective. And then Joe Dispenza popped into my head, and his story about how when he popped out of his body, when he'd look back at his body, he'd become afraid and then shoot back in his body. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to do that. So I didn't turn around. And then I remembered him saying, oh, well, you can walk through walls. And that was another thing that scared him back into his body. So I said, okay, well, I can just walk through this wall. So I walked through the wall. And then I went into my friend's room. I saw her. I went out. I got a broom. I rode it around like a witch. And I ended up in a square. And in the square, I felt this presence looming behind me that felt evil to me. Or it set off this protective response that I was really familiar with from when I was a kid and all up until this point, because that presence had been following me whenever I leave my body at night. So that scared me right back into my body. Well, I made the decision. I remember thinking, I know that thing, and I think it's a good time to go back. So I went back to my body, and when I got back to my body was so freaked out. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. But I realized at the time, finally, that the reason why I hadn't been able to astral project in the past was because my consciousness didn't trust that it could leave my body unattended. My natural protective mechanisms were disorganized, and dysfunctional. And so what happens is that you then have to keep watch. You use your higher level thinking to manage your body and make sure you're safe, when really your subconscious mind is supposed to be doing all of that for you, and it's not supposed to take any thought or awareness. So yeah, so why would I leave? My body's not safe. I can't leave it behind to protect itself. So that moment of safety that she gave me, I guess I was then feeling okay to leave. So I did. Now, in this experience, I came not face to face, but back to this thing that had been following me for my whole life. And a friend asked me, have you ever turned around and looked at it? I said, oh my gosh, I've never turned around and I've never looked. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna ask to see it, because that's the only place I ever ran into it. And so I went to sleep, and before I went to sleep, as I was dozing into Alpha Theta, I asked, okay, I want to see it, and I also want to ask it to go on its way, with loving kindness. And so I did that, and I went to a place where it became clear that, first of all, I could see it following me. I zoomed out of the path that I had been walking on and saw him walk by, and it was this old man, and he looked like he was carrying a hubcap. I'm sure it wasn't a hubcap, but that's what it looked like. And then it became apparent to me that he was following me because I had something that he wanted. It felt like there was some treasure that he wanted, but there's more to that story. But basically, sometimes these lower energy beings follow you just because you're brighter and they like the energy. So I don't think he meant any harm. He was just following me, and it felt scary because I never looked at him and saw what he was. So I asked him in that version to go on his way, and then I woke up and he never came back again since I've been asleep. Since I've been traveling in my sleep, he hasn't come back. So then I realized that I could ask that version of myself to do things for me. And so then I started to experiment and ask for this version to clear certain stuck emotions, or to help me find clarity in certain situations. And, just 2 nights ago, I was starting to work with a new client, doing some healing, and I asked to be clear and to be confident and to remove all the things in the way that would keep me from giving her the best healing possible. And I went to a very clear place, and I was there with her and her mom, and the mom basically reassured me in that moment that she trusted me, and this was in another realm. And when I woke up, I felt perfectly calm, at peace, and excited. So anyway, I just so now I use this whenever I feel stuck. And when you go to sleep, just as you're hitting that dozy state, Alpha Theta, right when you're about to fall asleep, that's when you want to ask your question, or you make your request. I have a particular way I do it, but maybe there's a way that you can speak to yourself better. Everyone, I think, has an individual way that they hear it best. The key is finding that place where staying conscious right until you fall asleep. And then you see what happens. And then I always write it down in the morning, so that I can encourage myself or train myself to stay more conscious when I'm out and about at night. So anyway, give it a try. Hope that helps.